Hello everybody, I'm here with Atticus, or Charles. He came into recognition on the Avalon website after an interview with Bill Ryan. After this interview, there was a year of controversy. A lot of internet space and radio time was used up about exactly what actually happened and what was said. Hello Stephen, I've known you a short while. A lot of people have known you a lot longer, and a lot of people don't know you at all. But everybody seems to have a strong opinion about you. As somebody who's known you a relatively short time, especially from the internet point of view, I would like to ask a couple of questions that would help clear things up for me and hopefully other people. Is that okay?
Yeah, I can totally understand that, considering the confusion, yes.
Okay, you mentioned briefly in your video what you did before the video came out. Can you go through that again? What exactly were you doing? What was your job or what was your profession before you decided to come out into the open?
Well, I had a basic function, which is what I performed out in the world. I was also a gentleman's gentleman for someone. And this made me privy to a group of people who, again, had some sway over what I did. Do you want, what sort of level do you want that at? Do you want, there's sort of 3 tiers there.
I would like you to go through all 3 tiers if you want. I'd like it to be completely open and honest. I'd like to know exactly what it was you did.
Okay, it's a bit difficult for the upper tier, shall we say, for being involved with the 33, because my involvement with the 33 was very limited in as far as the business they did, because everyone was cleared from the room unless you were involved in the business, and then of course you only knew the business you were involved in. And my basic function for them really was, I worked for a guy who policed information, retrieved information from people that basically gained that information through insidious ways over a long period of time, and used it for making profit and manipulating commerce in the business world. So then you go down to the second tier. The guy I worked for, I did everything for. I looked after, I cooked for, I drove. I was a gentleman's gentleman, and all the things that went with that, companion as well, for 17 odd years. And my actual job in the world, as it were, the function I went out and performed, I went out and was basically a chameleon. I would go for a job interview for whatever position, wherever it was, gen up on the position, get the job. I think I've been for some 630 odd interviews in my life, and I've got every job. That's not by accident. A lot of work was done before I went there, obviously. I would get the job, get the seat in the company, and then perform the function I was put in there to do, and that varied. Quite often it was retrieval of information.
I want to try and keep this like skin and bones a little down to the bare minimum. Instead, I'm going to ask, what was your main job before you decided to come out into the open, and how did that relate to the information you have?
Okay, well, my main function out in the world was basically to infiltrate companies in whatever guise I needed to do that, usually via a job interview and getting the interview. This was all pre-prepared, and I would always get the job. Once I was in the company, I would attain the position I was meant to, either attain the information I was meant to, or perform the function I was going to perform. And this went on a daily basis, depending on where I was. Some places I was seconded to all over the world, or different companies, sometimes for 6 months, sometimes for 3 days. Sometimes I'd think I'd be there for 6 months, and I'd be there for 3 days and get what I wanted and be gone. Well, I was going to say, this led to me, obviously, the information that I retrieved quite often was, I retrieved it, mentally. So I pieced things together along the way. This made me maybe a little bit more overt in trying to still try and take control of my own existence to an extent, but this was all monitored, of course.
How did that job give you the information that you could provide us with?
Well, basically, I infiltrated companies on the behest of people to retrieve information mostly, or basically perform a function in there. And in retrieval of that information, I've put quite a lot of it together myself, and this made me quite independent of thought to an extent, and I embarked on trying to feather my own nest. Of course, this was all monitored. I just thought I was clever. But that was my daily function, if you like. I went out and performed, it was commercial espionage to an extent, I suppose.
And because you were retrieving this information, that left you privy to that information naturally.
Yeah, because quite often it was me that retained it mentally. So I literally would, it was the only way half the time, what with security as it is now.
It was maybe a little bit like Inception, the film Inception.
Yeah, you could say that. There's a lot of films, you know, a lot of these sorts of films are based on this kind of stuff that goes on between companies. But the fact of the matter is, it is rather boring, and you do have to work there for 3 months and have relationships with people at the water cooler, only to know that you're there just to do a job. So you know, it's not quite as flamboyant and glamorous as people think it is. Quite often you wake up in a generic hotel room every morning and sometimes forget where you are actually in the world.
And at what stage did you decide you wanted to leave that behind and start giving information to people to help change things?
Well, I didn't. The first instance was basically with that information I realised that we were all pretty much fucked. And me being me, I thought, well, I'd get me and mine together and feather my own nest just before. This basically meant that I tried to preempt the futures market in a massive way, knowing the future. So I was going to make some killings on the stock market, basically, is a short way of saying it. And I did this via connecting to some equipment. Unfortunately, that went a little wrong and backfired. This gave me a slightly different outlook. And let's just say the whole thing, you could say, was a manipulation from point A, which was when I was first taken on, which was some 17 years ago. But that was unbeknown to me. I thought I was doing something that would feather my own nest, which resulted in me coming out and deciding to spill the beans in only the way I can. And that statement will become apparent why I've said that later.
Okay then. And so you made this decision to come out into the open. What was your initial plan?
Well, the initial plan wasn't mine. It was engineered by someone else, and as usual, I was the vehicle for it. I was told to approach a community of people that we could basically organise and give a budget to expose certain parts of commerce to using true-faced media that isn't coerced by anyone else in an independent way. There are others doing this. I'm from a media background, big time. I've owned many record labels, recording studios. I've been involved in TV programs and so on. And there are a lot of independent production companies out there that have got people like me in and around them and funding them and so on. And it's part of a big push to basically use what there is in front of us, this media wagon that we have in front of us now. Because that's the same wagon that's being run over you. So it's a countermeasure as such. There's not many of us left, and we're completely overrun. We have been over 100 years. So we're just trying to, it's a lifeboat. We're just trying to make as many people aware of what's going on just before it does, so there's more chance of a memory stick afterward.
Yeah, you said that the plan was engineered by someone else. Can you say who was it?
Well, when I say someone else, this is where a lot of confusion comes in, because that someone else I consider someone else, and I consider it one life. And that's because of what I've been shown and taught about it, and I am not a religious man. And do not adhere to any religion, because if you know what I know, you'd know why I don't. But this is the nearest thing I've got to a religion, because these people have looked after me very well, and they're kind and good people, and they've had our backs for a long time without any recognition at all. In fact, the opposite. And it started with a very famous individual, Saint Germain, and that order has continued with various illustrious names in it, and the last of which I worked for. And this was his stratagem and plan, but culminating over the last three, because from what I can understand, I think some things that were found were hidden for a long time before they were actually revealed that they were found. So I think this plan went back a little further than I first envisaged, but as far as I understood, it was his plan, and that was my G, that was the guy I worked for. Basically, why I went to that community, well, it's pretty simple. I didn't go to that community on the behest of the plan. I was asked to get a group of people and filter them in much the same way as been done many times for many other reasons. So this is really trained stuff, you know, stuff I do all the time. When I'm put in somewhere into an office, say there's 70 people on my floor, I will make sure that my relationship with every one of those people is exactly what I want it to be. And that's a way of keeping control of the situation. And this has took years of training, and basically it makes me a pretty good filter of people. A lot of prejudice, I can bring prejudice up, make them prejudiced against me because of my accent or the way I am. I often play dumb to get wise, and so on. So this is why I was used as a tool to go to people. Now, I looked at the situation, and I was in marketing at the time, and I had a marketing machine behind me, well, various businesses behind me at the time. So I just got some marketing research done for me, and those researchers, one of them still working for me, so off and on, got some researchers to look into it, and basically, to cut a long story short, we ended up with you guys. You're an island. You're pretty much not influenced, and by you guys I mean this genre. You're pretty much not steered by anything. It's just a mess of people that just aren't buying it, and that made you a good well to start in. So I came here, and I looked for the best in the community, and that happened to be Avalon. They looked the best organised, and not only that, the person running it, as far as I could see, the person that was in charge of it, is someone that was already known to the people I work for a completely unconnected reason. A curiosity. So I approached him, and I approached him. It was never the idea for me to do any sort of it, or even be involved in any way. Basically, I was just going to guard that person and give that person, facilitate that person to do what they want in an ergonomic way to let it evolve in exactly what we're doing, you know. But unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. But that's a long story.
So why did you choose Avalon? What was it about Avalon and Bill that you chose them and not other ones, say Camelot or other radio stations that are on the net, forums and so on?
Well, for starters, I wasn't coming out as a whistleblower in any way, shape or form or anything like that. It was literally looking for someone, and it was quite amazing, really. We do go with what you may call kismet, or the flow of the river, or whatever you want to call it, but basically we do believe in that in quite an immense way, and I've got many reasons for that, and we do use that way of thinking quite often, and it just stood up that this guy was already known, and was annoying people. He was also the end of a line, one of the 427, which made him a curiosity. We looked into his past, and he had a lot of training in personnel management and so on. So, and then on top of that, he was in charge of a forum with a lot of open-minded people on there that seemed quite well behaved. People were quite open-minded. As far as the other forums are concerned, well, I wasn't interested in forums or anything like that. I was just interested in giving someone the facilities to do what we wanted to set out to do, which was basically give people a voice, in short.
And what was the 427?
The 427, they're basically initial lines. They're lines that are still in some control, that are still mapped to some accuracy.
And you said you didn't intend to be a whistleblower. Did that create problems for you?
Well, the thing is, I wasn't actually a whistleblower. I didn't tell anyone anything they didn't already know, and when I first contacted Bill, this was never the case, never was going to be the case. It was actually Bill's idea to do an interview because he thought it would be the best way to get across to people. Well, I thought Bill would get across to people. So I mean, there's a lot of ins and outs of how we ended up there, but believe me, I didn't want to do one. I'm a very private person. I think I've spoken more words in the last year than I have in my entire life. No one's ever, I've got no background, no history of any sort, and what there is all fabrication. So this is not something that I'm really ever wanted to do, which was be in the limelight. But unfortunately, halfway through all of this, I lost some control of the situation due to the person I was working for contracting Alzheimer's, or early onset dementia. And this left me sort of holding the joystick on my own to some extent, and good or bad, one of the main mistakes I would have made was to do that interview. But I was under some pressure to do so at the time, and I thought, well, this is a good opportunity for someone like me to send the flare up and get everybody to look in one direction at once so I can look in everyone's eyes. So I agreed to do it.
And this concept was clear to Bill from the beginning.
Well, it was Bill's idea.
You said you felt the video was a mistake. Was it only a mistake, or were there any positives to come out of it?
Well, to be fair, at the time, it was just the person I was working for. Basically, it had just started, so I wasn't sure if it was that or it was just, you know, I was disagreeing with the idea, because quite bluntly, from the onset of this, I thought it was a bad idea. So personally, from a personal point of view, I've always thought, no way is this going to work. And I think that came out in the video a little, because that's where I was myself at the time. So no, I didn't want to do it. I don't consider myself a whistleblower, and I didn't want to do an interview, and it was pushed. But I thought, well, while I'm there, I might as well take advantage of it. So I just kicked everyone as hard as I could mentally. Believe me, that was really, really mentally loaded, that video, and is to this day.
And how did you respond to the reaction that you got after its release?
Well, the reaction for me was absolutely perfect, on the button. Sorry to say that and sound conceited, but it was. It did exactly what I thought it would. Everyone stood up and immediately showed who they were, and it halved them straight away. I got rid of half the people straight away, the people that just can't break out of what they're in. They immediately throw stones. So great, there's a line, straight through that. That's the filter for you. Straight away, I'm only looking at half the people. So this halved my job. I was very pleased with the outcome.
After that, there was a lot of interaction on the forums. Do you think that was misinterpreted and caused problems for you, or was there a deliberate will on your part to disrupt things?
Well, I've got my own personal opinions about what happened there, and I would say they're correct, because it's the game I've been in for years, and with the greatest respect to the people I'm playing with at the moment, no problem. I can see what happened. And a void was left after that interview, and I wouldn't post. That's not what I was there for. I was there to observe and see who showed the presence of mind that we needed, you know, the clearness of mind, the stability. And what happened, I was slowly egged into posting. After being asked and badgered, and that didn't work, what happened in the end was I was kind of sort of ousted as a false member. And that almost set me in a bad light straight away. I mean, it was mismanaged if you think about it. What should have been said was, no, don't come on the forum. And it was actually Bill that signed me on the forum. I didn't even know. I just got this email one day, and there I was on Avalon Forum. And I was travelling at the time. But I thought, well, it's a good way to communicate with him through the PM system, and that's what we did. But then that changed because he asked me to do something or other, or participate in something on there, and then my avatar was known. And I don't know how it happened, but some people put two and two together, some people with the mods. As always, there was a leak of some description, and they figured out who I was, and someone come to me. I can't remember who it was, actually, and basically someone came to Bill, and Bill came to me with their email in the PM and said, look, you know, you're going to have to come clean because this isn't right. So it was almost portrayed that I'd done something dishonest when I'd never been to a forum before, apart from one, which was nothing like this, in my life, you know. So to blame me for doing something for deceitful was a bit off. But I thought, okay, well, you know, there we are. So I held my hands up. And then I was basically picked apart and left there. Bill just silenced himself at that point and just left me in this void. But I thought, again, you know, I'm taught to take advantage of a disadvantage, so I thought, well, here's the people, let's poke. I can poke first hand here.
And what was the result of that poking?
Well, the expected result would have been out of, say, 3,000 people, 3% of people that could manage to keep their mind clear enough and dodge what's being done to everybody, so that we could coherently move forward with as little interference as possible. And that's more or less been achieved.
And after your interaction with the forums, were there any personal consequences for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was personal consequences for me right from the onset, because basically for me to do what I did, I had to, I was given something to hide and also to use as leverage in the initial stages, but that became too dangerous to keep about, so that is now destroyed. So yeah, there's been, I basically lost everything I had. I think at one point I was worth some 26 million US dollars, and had several companies. This was some 3 years ago. Right up until, and I downsized that myself because I more or less retired in most sense of the word, and was with G most of the time. But then this came up, and after that, basically I was set about by what you would call the elite. And all the banking chains, at the end of the day, we still use the same energy chain as everybody else does. That was made as constricted as possible for me. My identity was destroyed, and I've been stabbed. I've had a syringe stuck in me. I've been run over and had various punch-ups in the street. So yeah, you could say I've lost all my houses. I had to run to Switzerland at one point, which put another person in danger, and then come back. So yeah, there's a lot of shit goes on for me, yeah. While everyone else talks about it and thinks it's a Mills and Boon novel, I'm wearing out tyres and money.
How do you feel people would have reacted if you had mentioned that at the time? Because you never ever said much about what was going on in your life at the time. Did you feel that was something you should keep hidden, or was that something you kept hidden for a reason?
I think it's something you keep hidden for a reason, because trouble scares people, and if they realise the kind of pressure I was under, especially the people around me, and I knew they were in no immediate danger, it was literally me. I just didn't think it would help the situation in any way, shape or form. The nearest and closest people to me obviously knew, because there was geographical things going on. I was flying to places and turning up in different places and so on. So that had to be explained. So they had to, and obviously there was times where I was in hospital, I was in a coma for a little while. And that couldn't, be explained away. People had to know about that, and everyone got involved in that. I nearly died at that point, I think. I think I was dead for a couple of minutes. So, yeah, I just didn't think it was good to have all that out in the open, because we were actually trying to do something at the time. Quite a simple job of work, but the pressure we've been under from the outside was making this very, very difficult. So I didn't want to add to it with that. I mean, in this last year, we totted it up the other day. I've spent £37,000 on airfares alone this year.
Back to the Avalon situation. It's probably a very big story, but can you just give a brief outline of the breakdown of your relationship with Bill Ryan as you see it?
Well, when you say a breakdown of the relationship, I mean, initially it was fine, and was fine until pressure was put on everyone from the outside, and unfortunately, you don't always act true to character, especially under pressure, and it just went pear-shaped from there. I tried to keep control of it to an extent, and but there's only so much you can do, and when massive geographical distance is put between you and people, it becomes very difficult. And a lot of his peers were being pressurised as well, and so on. So quite frankly, I expected as much in the long run. I realised in the long run this was going to happen. This made me a little lacklustre. I think there was a conversation taped February the 18th, and I think kind of about there I realised that it was never Bill's intention to be a member of anything. So it wasn't, the 18, it was going to be Bill and the 18, because he had his own thing he wanted to do. I don't think it fitted in. I think he wanted to tell my story. I think he found my story important in some ways. On a personal level, it interested him. We were friends. I think my life, in some ways, opened a lot of, answered a lot of questions for him, even though I didn't know I was answering them. In my own ignorance, just telling him about where I've been, and because I've been there on that certain day and done that certain thing, he's been able to put two and two together. So a lot of that went on. And I think that all of that going on at the time confused the issue, and the real story in the middle of it was what we was actually trying to be there for, got very confused and kerfuffled in there. So everyone wants to throw stones at Bill. He's not an axe-murderer. He just got it wrong, and we were all under a lot of pressure at the time. So there's no animosity between me and Bill. He made some stupid mistakes, for instance. Putting Anelia Benz in front of me was just a freeloading opportunist. That was a foolish thing to do, and we all know what happened there. Well, you know, everyone's got their cross to bear. That's just embarrassing for him as it stands. What's that got to do with me? But no, there's been no contact since then. And I've asked, you know, he's been approached by other people saying that I've been doing all these things and so on and so forth. I'm a little disappointed with that because he should know very well that I'm a man of honour and I wouldn't have done those things. That's quite disappointing. The other thing is, since all these things have been said, none of them have come to fruition. There's no retraction. Everyone just shuffles along like nothing's happened. So that's quite naive, really, by everyone, and intriguing, the reaction. But this just shows the reverence and the trust that he's held in, and I feel that he may have abused that a little at times. But you know, hey, we're all human. As I said, I've got no problem with Bill. As far as the others are concerned, I wasn't interested in any of the other forums, and I'm afraid that disinterest actually upset a lot of people.
So, you kept very quiet about that whole disagreement or breakdown in relationship, whatever you want to call it. Why did you not give your point of view across? Why did you not get involved in that?
Well, quite frankly, it was just nonsense, all of it. The gossip mill and rumour mill started. There was other relationships going wrong in there that was absolutely nothing to do with me, which got lumped in with me as well. Disagreements between people about my validity and so on. And Bill was quite stalwart in that because he's seen documentation and he's met me. So there wasn't any doubt in his mind. So I think a lot of that was, it was nothing to do with me. And this was all due to pressure being pushed from the outside, and it all just fell apart. I don't think any of it was anything to do with me, really, most of it.
You failed to address any of these allegations that were thrown at you. You failed to fight back at the time. You just stayed silent. Was there a reason you stayed silent when you could have easily have come back and stated your case?
Well, for one, it's there's, you know, I promised I wouldn't. I don't operate like that, believe it or not. That's not how it works. And I'd already promised and made an oath in the first instance to do no harm and fly straight. I had to show the whole system for what it is and how it can even affect a community like this and how bent this community will just mirror the system around it. Every community does. It doesn't matter what you think, right down to a kibbutz. It just mirrors outside because the indoctrination is on a genetic level. So I didn't need to defend myself because I knew this was all going to, you know, I knew this was, the truth is an old saying, the truth always out, and that's basically what I'm saying. I knew it would all come out in the long run what's happened, it always does. So best just to sit tight and not partake in the gossip mill. It doesn't really help anything. I had little to say, to be honest, and I hadn't attacked anyone. I hadn't actually had a falling out with anyone. I actually, at that point, I'd had no crosswords with anyone, yet everyone was attacking me for some unknown reason, and yet people didn't realise that there was outside pressure. In fact, if you look back at the situation, you can see the threshold. I wouldn't post on people's sites; they got annoyed about that. You know, all that sort of thing. It just, and then that was taken advantage of by some people that were hovering around us, and I just didn't want to partake in all that because we had a job of work to do and it was just going to belittle what we were doing. And at the end of the day, it is just all nonsense.
Some of his allegations against you were particularly hurtful, I reckon. And there was people saying that you didn't really have cancer and other such claims. How would you respond to that?
Well, I think if you end up in the public eye in any sort of way, you've got to expect that sort of thing. So I haven't really got a response to that. I know what happened, and I've documented it, and people have seen the evidence, so there's no real problem whether they want to. I think those things were just said more out of spite than anything. I think if you put any one of those people up in front of me on Skype right now, you'd see a very different animal, especially if I could turn the video on and show them the documents I'm holding. So I think a mob is unruly and cannot be spoken to. A person, an individual is reasonable, a mob is not. So I think it's just a case of that. So I hold no ill will there. There were a couple of people that done some very stupid things, but you know, I'll deal with that.
And after your experience with Avalon and the abuse you were getting, what is your overall opinion of the alternative media now from an outside viewpoint? I mean, how it's run, organised, and how the information is released. What's your overall view on that?
Well, it's very clear to me. I've got a massive background in media, and to me, this is just a genre. I didn't initially come to it expecting that, but now I'm looking back with hindsight, I can tell you quite clearly, I've invaded a genre. This was a business. The people in it were promoting themselves, and promoting themselves for financial income. What they're doing with that income is entirely up to them. I'm not saying anything about that, but that's definitely the case. So where you've got commerce in exchange for information, that's a media service. So this is a business, and that is exactly how all these people are seeing it. The problem in there is that they're distracting a lot of people from some very serious business. And there are actually some people in there that are just out and out snake oil salesmen. It's as simple as that. So yeah, it's a business. I look on it and I see that they've made themselves a business community, and they've trapped a net of people in there, and they're feeding, and they don't seem to me to be too discerning about where the information comes from. And I'll cite my own case as a point and case. And they don't, and as it's a community that seems to be based on truth and whistleblowing and so on, when you think about the individuals that have actually said something and stood up, and their treatment after that, and the treatment of their personal details and so on, you seem to see that it is a snake that eats itself. They just go round and round, and when there's no fodder in there, they bite each other. And this is human behaviour, and I understand that. But there's a lot of really good people in there that are caught up in that, and that's a little bit sad. So from that point of view, it's not very pleasant smelling, to be honest. And then seeing the way people have reacted, admittedly they've been under pressure, but it still pushes all it does is push the cards the same way they were going to fall anyway. So they're not blameless, and some of the things that have been done have been absolutely disgraceful. Disgraceful. And met with no aggression from me, and yet continued. They were even having a go at my car at one point. I mean, it got quite disgraceful and completely ridiculous. And then immediately everyone turns around when it doesn't happen, and we all move on again, and the merry-go-round goes again. And what I want to do is give the people in there, the good people in there, a chance to jump off that merry-go-round and do something with themselves, and do something with their time on the internet, which doesn't cost them hardly anything, but actually can put a big dent or sharpen a point of a needle that we can stick in what's causing them woe.
Do you have a message to those characters in the alternative media that you would like to pass on here? Well, I'm fairly indifferent about all of them. I mean, there's only two people in the whole genre that I've met that are actually for real. Richard Hoagland, and help me out, Rhiannon, I can never remember the chap's name. I've got like a mental block since I got jabbed. What's the chap's name? You know the guy that still talks to him.
Yeah, that's Arthur Norman.
Thank you, yeah. And him. The rest of them I don't really care about, to be honest. Good luck and lollipops. If they come after me with any more lies, I am going to defend myself. I'm fed up with that. Leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. Get on with what you're doing. That's fine. You're going to end up doing the same thing we're doing anyway. That's logical, and that's where it's going to go. It doesn't matter how much kicking and screaming and ruler waving and spear throwing there's going to be. Hello? Is that better?
Yes, Stephen.
Much better.
What was the second name which you mentioned? It was not clear to me.
It was Richard Hoagland, and the other chap was Arthur What was his name?
Neumann. He was called Henry Deacon first in the interview. Maybe you know by that name.
That's it. Yeah, but while they're all chucking spears and arrows and so on, I'm not interested. But if they keep doing it, and it's actually hurting people now that are just having nothing to do with anything and just want to get on with what they're doing. People are shouting fraud and so on. This is quite clearly not the case anymore. and I'm going to take issue with it if it carries on. And what's the point? The point of it is I've got every communication I've ever had, and I've got absolutely nothing to hide. Nothing. So bring it on anytime you want, face to face if you like.
So, what is going to be your next step now?
Well, I've got a bit of difficulty anyway because people are trying to get me out of circulation anyway. There's a lot of pressure being put on us. There's several individuals like me hovering around this community now, exerting a massive pressure, so they will destroy it. It'll take them a couple of months, 3 or 4 months to do it, but they'll do it. We'll get a lot of big talk now, but believe me, they'll do it. So my immediate goal is to just keep head above water for the moment, sort out our YouTube stuff, you know, that software we're going to do and so on, get that server sorted. Just generally fend it off for the moment. Everyone's had a real tough week. We all know that. We've had a tough week this week. And that's because there's professionals standing around us now. Real professionals. So I'm just trying to keep my head above water, really, and everyone else's for the moment.
I meant actually for other people, Stephen, not for us. What is your next step in general? Like, as if you're talking to the whole world, not just...
Well, I don't know really, Billy. I haven't really got one, mate. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. I suppose my personal next step is I've got something I want to do on a personal level, but would people want to hear about that?
Well, you've achieved what you want to achieve now. What is it that you want to achieve now? What is the next step for everybody else in this chain?
Well, it's a relay race. It always is, isn't it? You've got about 120 years to get the paddle to the other side. So as much information, straight up, honest information in format out there on servers on the web for an event in about 40 years time, which will basically make that stay out there forever, and there's not a damn thing anyone's going to be able to do about it. That's due to technology that's on the way. That more or less has been done. Much of the software that was used to initially forecast this has been satisfied. But it's a relay race. I mean, us guys are going to get forgotten about. It won't be this website, it may be another. But at the end of the day, there will be a showdown between two-click votes electronically on the internet, if you want to call it that at that point. Two sides, corporate and not. You outnumber them by millions, but it's whether you can net in those people and make them understand what they're actually up against, because most of them don't even know they're in a war. So, and it's been going for over 120 years, and they've already lost more or less. So it's just hanging on to that information for that period in time, so that that initial contest can be won, and that information make it to the other side of what's coming.
So you're going to release more information?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been backward in coming forward about information. The problem is I'm not technical. I have to talk. If someone sits me with an engineer, I can describe what I've seen. They immediately understand what I'm talking about, draw it out, etc., etc. If I just explain it, well, it's pretty pointless, really. The language side of it, the mind manipulation side of it, the what you would call, I suppose, spiritual side of it, although it isn't for me. Maybe I'm quite good at. The people side of it, maybe I could really shed some light on, and how people are controlled and the mechanisms in society that are used to do so. Some of them are so innocuous, it's unbelievable, but they really are so effective. The tier system and how that works and how you can maneuver around in it, because I've had to do it, that's revealed a lot of things. I'd be quite willing to talk about any of that. But this is all very long-winded stuff. Any information about historical stuff I've seen. I wasn't very interested in history. But you know, I did take a lot of notes down and did, you know, do what I was supposed to do to pass what I was supposed to pass, and I did actually end up ferrying a lot of this stuff about. So I got to look at it for long periods of the time, sitting in the back of a lorry. So yeah, there's some stuff I can tell you. Read a lot of books while I was waiting for people. Books. I mean, I went in a room once that the door hadn't been open for 120 years, and it actually struck me that the table I sat down at, the chap that let me in there said the table was very, very old. And it struck me when I put the notepad on the table and I got my big biro out that when that door was last opened, these two products I hold in my hand weren't even invented. You know, so there's a lot of stuff I can talk about and I've seen, but it'll have to come out as it comes out, because I'm just remembering my, you know, the same as anyone else would. You know, if you can't be sat down and examined like this, I need help.
Okay, well, hopefully you're going to get it pretty soon. Thank you very much for answering these questions, and good night.